Alrighty, so this week, among other things, we're reading about mindfulness and negotiation, and we're dipping back into mindful listening. You can probably see the connection between negotiating effectively and listening. And so we come back to the do not interrupt exercise. Please continue to do that exercise as we talked about. It's a technique, do not interrupt, but it's also an intention that we probably always possess, but can't manage to keep to that intention. That's where, of course, this gets interesting. So this week, continue to, as much as you can, and if you can set aside a day in particular, that can be helpful, to do not interrupt and to notice and pay attention to what goes on, because Paul Singerman will be talking to you about that. And we want to have it where you share your experiences so he can provide you with insight and guidance in that regard. Now, of course, we say we have the technique to not interrupt because that allows us to hear more of what the other person's saying, to be able to take it in because we're not thinking about what we're going to say or jump in with, and for them to feel like we're there having a conversation with them, listening to them. There's so much good stuff that comes from that. But you don't need to be taking a course in mindfulness, and somebody you could teach that to, just say don't interrupt and see what happens, and they'd be like, oh my God, I had a better time with my partner, I had a better time with my client, got more out of it. But we understand, and there's a reading for this week that I wrote with my father in the medical context on mindful listening, and so pay close attention to that 2-pager and bring it to life with your own direct experience, and reflect on how it is that it connects to the body scan practice that we are exploring this week. As we've talked about repeatedly, all of these techniques, all of these insights, all of these practices, they're all pointing in the exact same direction. And so hopefully this week you'll have a sense that the discussions of mindfulness and negotiation, and mindfulness and listening, and mindfulness and going to the balcony are all different ways of articulating the very same insights and techniques and ideas for being more effective at what we do. As I shared with you in reading the short beginning to The Voice Inside Your Head, this negotiation, this narrative, this conversation, which is so helpful to be aware is taking place, it's a very useful internal dialogue. We miss much of it. We begin to realize that with the mindful listening that we're exploring, while we might often think that we're mindfully listening to somebody else and that we don't want to interrupt somebody else, we begin to realize, and today's discussion of the spiral might be relevant as you reflect on this, that we're also interested in not interrupting ourselves. And to be able to mindfully listen, meaning to be more aware of the thoughts, feelings, and sensations that are sort of emerging when we're finding ourselves in conversations, or even with our own interpretation of our and narration of our experience in the moment that isn't comfortable, that's agitating, and to be able to be more present for our experience so we can perhaps learn more about ourselves, learn more about what's actually taking place, and make better decisions of what to do or what not to do and the ways to effectuate them. So this week, do not interrupt, explore mindful listening, and look forward to our having a conversation with Paul Singerman about this on Friday.